I didn't think I would hear from anyone. I thought they would just, like you're saying, go on to the next shiny object, which apps are really shiny objects, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got flooded with emails. And it was a really poignant and beautiful learning moment for me. People wanted to know why I was closing the app. People wanted to thank me for providing the service.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Amy Giddon. Amy has always believed that everyone belongs, that we need to see each other and hear each other. Let me just restart the intro there. Amy has always believed that everyone belongs and that we need to see and hear each other. When she started to feel that we were becoming more us versus them and less we're all in this together, she left behind her successful corporate career to found Daily Haloha, a simple daily routine to help us find our way back to each other and build empathy and connection. After running the app for over 5 years and consulting with other startups in the connection area, Amy took a 6-month slowbatical to focus on tending to her own connections and to consolidate and synthesize all she's learned and experienced about loneliness, connection, and belonging. Congrats on your 5-year run with Haloha, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
Yes. So what kinds of opportunities does today's unique situation present for business owners that realize relationships with customers are key to growth?
Wow. Well, we're in a pretty interesting moment in history, aren't we? There's trends that have been going on for decades, and then some things that are more recent and things that are on the horizon. And I think for the companies that get it and return to their human, they can really seize the moment and forge really strong relationships with people, which is what it's all about. I mean, just to name some of the forces at play at this moment in time, there is a crisis of disconnection. It is not new. It's been going on for decades and decades, but it's really nuanced and affects different generations of people differently, different types of people differently. But I think it's gotten a lot of visibility of late, and we're becoming more aware at just how disconnected we are from one another. What the high proportion of the American and worldwide population that would say that they're lonely, and then also the dire consequences of continued disconnection, fragmentation, and loneliness on our personal and collective well-being. So there's that going on. There's also, we live in a very polarized political time, which we all know. So that causes further disconnection, not only from us individually and with our intimates, but also our feeling of civic participation, our trust in institutions, government institutions, businesses, corporations, etc. And we also have AI looming. We know that AI is here, it's here to stay. We don't yet know all the ways it's going to impact us, but it's raising a lot of questions in people's minds. So all of this impacts our feelings of connectedness, our feelings of belonging, and our feelings of trust. So for those companies that really take the time to understand that and to think about, their role in that larger ecosystem of the environment that they play in, both socially, politically, economically, and then down to their individual relationships, they have a real opportunity, I think, to give people what they're missing in their lives and in their relationships and forge really strong bonds that'll help them grow.
Absolutely. This new trend, this feeling disconnection, and it finally reached a point where companies have realized that they need to provide this sense of belonging, this sense of safety for their customers to really to stand out. Because like I said, with all this AI and all this content being put out, and how much people don't trust what they see anymore, they don't trust the people that are communicating with them online, that going back to and slowing down enough to build real, genuine human connections again with people is going to be the biggest differentiator between one business and another. And it also is going to, for businesses that do pull this off, they're going to be way more resilient to all the upcoming disruptions and changes in the marketplace, because people aren't going to be distracted by the next shiny thing. They're going to feel that bond and connection to a brand that they have been missing for so long, that the thought of bitching one provider or one business for someone else just because there's a flashy deal going on is going to be much less persuasive, because they'd be leaving this sense of belonging, connection, and safety that they're not getting many other places, if anywhere. So I think that's just for a company that's trying to scale and grow and stand out, approaching people as human beings and building not just the outward facing brand, but the employee brand as well, is going to be the best differentiator you can go with it going forward, it sounds like.
Yeah, I completely believe that. Connections engender fostering a sense of connection and belonging really engenders deep loyalty. And ultimately, that's what a business is after in their relationship with customers, loyalty. And loyalty does a lot. Like you're saying, it lets people vote with their dollars rather than get distracted by shiny objects. It also helps companies recover from missteps. I think if we talk about building trust and engendering loyalty, that means that people are forgiving. If you make a mistake, they want to believe the best in you, the best about you, right? People want to vote with their dollars. They want to make decisions that are aligned with their values, and having loyalty and having a real relationship helps people do that. So there's a lot of benefits that accrue to businesses that foster real connection, engender loyalty, and think about their relationships with their customers for the long term. I'll tell you one interesting thing that I learned about this with my own business, which was called Daily Haloha, as you mentioned. I developed a mobile app to help actually rekindle a sense of shared humanity and connectedness with people all over the world. We had 50,000 people coming through our doors. And very simply, what the app presented to people was a simple daily ritual of self-reflection, but in a collective space where you reflected on your own and then saw reflections of others on one single question every day, and had a level of interactivity. And when I built this back in 2017, it was really meant to be positioned kind of as an antidote to social media and the way social media stoked division and separation and fragmentation. And its business engine, runs on status and who's shouting the loudest and popularity. So we functioned really differently, and everybody that participated in the app was anonymous. So I felt that I too would be anonymous as far as the person behind the app. I was very deliberately tried to stay behind the curtain of the brand. And I wanted Daily Haloha as a brand to speak for itself, and our values I was very open with our values. I built an experience that lived our values and demonstrated our values, and people really appreciated that. So I thought, when I closed the app last summer, with a heavy heart, I hope to resurrect it next year. But when I closed it, I kind of stepped in front of the curtain, and I communicated quite directly with our participants, our users, which I call participants, and explained said I was closing the app, how sorry I was about it, and gave my my business email address, and invited people to reach out to me if they had any questions or if I could support them in any way. I didn't think I would hear from anyone. I thought they would just, like you're saying, go on to the next shiny object, which apps are really shiny objects, right?
Mhm.
I got flooded with emails. And it was a really poignant and beautiful learning moment for me. People wanted to know why I was closing the app. People wanted to thank me for providing the service. They wanted information about and recommendations for other apps they might use that offered services like ours. And they just wanted a moment of connection. And I was really blown away by the range of beautiful notes I received. And I had some regret that I didn't step out from in front of the curtain, behind the curtain, into the front of the curtain earlier. And I realized that I had missed an opportunity, even though, we were a tech platform that lived our values. People want to know who's behind it. I think especially if it's tech. And, we were a tiny little business, but it really mattered to people that they got to have a moment to hear from me directly. So that was an interesting learning. And I would just share that with other business owners that, as leaders, you really have an opportunity to step from behind the curtain and make yourself known as a human and be the face of your company, the face of the brand. And not only does the person at the top have an opportunity to do that, but with a workforce that's engaged and empowered and feels like they belong, there's an opportunity for many people from within the company to be multiple faces of the company and have real direct personal, connection with employees. With the customers.
That is such a beautiful story. And I think it illustrates exactly what you're talking about with the recommendation for what a leader can do, especially for a tech company, and you're haven't been as visible or as open or transparent with your team, that not stepping forward, not being open, not being vulnerable, not connecting with people on that human to human level is hurting your team and your ability to connect with your customers. Because especially if you're early on or you're small, like your app was, the main differentiator between what your app does and someone else is likely to be the people behind it. And if you share your values and build the community around not just what the app's doing, but the people involved, and let them feel like they're connected with who you and your team are on a human level, that's probably a better differentiator than just spouting off a list of features that your app probably shares with a bunch of other competitors. And I imagine when you step behind the curtain yourself and you were talking to people directly via email, and they asked you, like, well, what other apps could I use that are similar? There probably were other ones out there, but they already felt connected to you because of the experience and if you could have even deeper connection if you were out from behind the curtain earlier. And so I think that's a great lesson and a great inspirational kind of first step that leaders can take, is to be more open and transparent and human with their teams. Because if you're not willing to take that first step and show up as a human to work, how can you expect your team members to show up and be their full selves and be fully committed to what they're doing if you're not taking that first step yourself? It's on the leader's shoulders to make those first steps.
It is. And I think, leaders also are just modeling the behaviors, the values, the principles that they want everyone else to model. And it's one thing to just sort of state your values and stick them on a wall and be done with it. It's very different to show up day after day, modeling the kinds of behaviors and values that matter. And I think that for both employees and customers alike, everyone's looking to belong, to have a sense of belonging. And belonging really requires a lot of, reciprocity. And I think going back to my story, you know, I was offering a service that was beautiful, but it wasn't a relationship of reciprocity. Like I wasn't showing myself. I was inviting everyone to show themselves in the app through the daily experience without showing myself. So, you know, I think for leaders that want to foster belonging with employees and customers, there's a couple of things I would, you know, recommend to keep in mind. You know, one is a feeling of reciprocity and mutuality. You know, how do we model behaviors that we expect others and want others to reflect back to us? You know, another is to invite contribution, right? So it's one thing to be a member of something, and it's another thing to feel like you belong to something. And to belong, you really have to feel not only known, recognized, and valued for who you are, which is the first step, but the second is to be given opportunities to contribute. Otherwise, you're just a lurker, right? You're part of it, but not really. It's easy to peel off and not engage. But when you have an opportunity to make a contribution and where you feel like your presence matters and makes a difference to the people around you, it's a very different level of engagement and involvement. So reciprocity, enabling and empowering contribution by a broad range of employees and even customers by asking for feedback, you know, recognizing people personally for who they are, their various identities, and reinforcing that they matter. And then the other thing I would say is a certain degree of humility and vulnerability. And humility requires some degree of vulnerability. You know, going back to something I said earlier, one thing relationships do is they offer forgiveness, right? So if you make a mistake and you show up with humility and transparency, it goes a long way. So those are some of the things I would suggest that leaders keep in mind.
And the big reason for leaders to, like, the end result of taking these steps and treating your employees these ways and showing up to your team these ways is that when you take better care of your employees, they do better work and your customers get a better experience, your product is better, and your business is more successful, because without your team, you don't have a business. And it doesn't matter how many times your people cycle through your business, it's only going to hurt your scaling if you're paying for onboarding every like 6 months because people aren't sticking with you. But if you take care of your team by showing up this way and other ways, your business is going to scale faster. Your company is going to do better because you're taking care of your internal teams. And so many companies, I think, try and cut these corners and don't take care of their teams well and wonder why productivity is down and the product isn't doing as well and customers aren't as happy. It's like it's a ripple effect that all starts with leadership and showing up and modeling the behavior you want your employees to exhibit themselves.
I totally agree. And when you say taking care of employees, it's an interesting question of like, well, what does that actually look like? Because it does matter. Like you're saying, it completely ripples through and directly impacts relationship with customers. And I would say taking care of employees since we're talking about connection and belonging, means not just being paternalistic, but empowering the organization, recognizing people's value, enabling them to contribute, those kinds of things. That creates an engaged, productive workforce. And it's the opposite of a transactional relationship with employees. And if you have transactional relationship with employees, employees have transactional relationships with customers. Right. And the opposite, the positive spin is also true. When employees feel like they are empowered, they can make a contribution, they belong and they matter and they're recognized in their individuality. That's how they'll treat customers. And it's that kind of treatment that fosters belonging and long-term, loyalty.
And that's what people are craving from the businesses that they want to work, like do business with, they want to give their money to. They're craving this. There's such a lack of that in the world. So if your business can be the first one in your market to start making these changes and providing this experience for your employees and your customers, that's going to put you way ahead of your competition who are still doing all the transactional stuff and wondering why people keep leaving them for you, because you're actually connecting on that human to human level.
Yeah. And, we started off this conversation talking about what's unique at this moment in time. And I'll add another one to the mix, which is that we've been moving toward a frictionless, contactless environment of commerce, right? And COVID accelerated that movement because we didn't want to put ourselves in harm's way or at risk by having in-person connections. So the companies raced to develop, contactless, frictionless ways of interacting. And it was the less human interaction, the better, right? So you can pick up your takeout order without ever seeing or speaking to a human. You can have things delivered to your door, all those things, which were sort of positives during COVID. But what that's done is it's withdrawn any human contact from our interactions with businesses. And there's some good things about that. We all care about efficiency. We all care about safety. But there's some real losses that come with a frictionless, contactless world. And I think that now it's a really interesting moment to think about, for businesses to think about, where do we want to add a little friction back? Where can it advantage me as a business to bring the heart and soul and humanity back into our interactions while maintaining the efficiency, right? And maybe it's customer segmentation, maybe it's all the different options that we give people and how we interact as we transact business. Some people want more contact, some people want more efficiency, but it's an interesting point in time to think about where we add a little human friction back into the equation.
I think that's a great point. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and connecting with me today, Amy. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Amy, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.